So this was a project we did with some product designers at Centre St Martin's in 2014, so a couple of years back. The situation was we've got quite a close relationship between the college and the council, Camden Council, and we were talking to the employment and growth team, some officers in the employment and growth team. There's massive amounts of development going on in King's Cross. So you've got the Crick Institute's gone up with sort of, I think it's crazy, like tens of thousands of people being brought into the area and massive building gone up. We've got Google moving in around there, huge development going on all over the place. The idea was that this was going to actually create more employment for some of the people right next door, just the other side, literally the other side of the railway tracks of St Pancras Station, which is Somerstown, which is one of the most disadvantaged areas of Camden, and actually one of the most disadvantaged areas of London, despite the fact that go sort of 10 miles north, you're in Highgate and Hampstead. So one of the challenges Camden's got is how do we actually sort of deal with this massive inequality that we've got within this borough of 380,000 people. So one of the questions we started looking at was, why aren't these jobs that are being created going to local people? That's what the council was asking. What's going on there? You know, are the jobs not being advertised to these people? What's happening? And so we were interested already in exploring the idea of empathy and exploring the idea of empathy tools before we started thinking about empathy things, based on the work that Cecil and Thomas and those guys have been doing. So we're talking about empathy tools, thinking about things like the Agnes suit and thinking, okay, is there something that I can put on that helps me understand what it's like looking for a job, or is there a role there? So we started looking into it and basically delivered the design students delivered a series of workshops over the course of 8 weeks. The idea was that as product designers, they were going to end up with a product that when you interacted with it, a game, a toy, an interaction, that when you interacted with it, gave you some insights either about what it's like to try and find the right person for your job or what it's like going for a job. And they were going to find those insights that were going to inform that by a series of workshops, working with people that were looking for work over a long period of time, long-term residents have been out of work for long periods of time, and employers in the area. So, but the thing we thought would be interesting, and because of the collaborative design approach that we apply, was to bring everybody together into the same space to do that. And so this is what I'm going to tell you briefly about. So the first workshop, there were a number of different methods and tools, typical design methods and tools developed. One of them was this sort of journey mapping tool. What's it like trying to find a job? And you've got standing there, one person is their local employer, and the other person is a local resident. And the residents there, and there's a design student that's facilitating this. And the residents there saying, okay, well, first of all, I look in the paper, but actually, there's never any jobs there, and by the time I get to the centre, it's very frustrating. Is it a happy experience? Is it an unhappy experience? Really typical service design journey mapping tool, but you're doing it in the presence of the employer that actually hasn't had that granularity coming from the voice of a person in their local area looking for work over the last 9 years. Then the employer goes through their process and they're saying, actually, you know what? It's really tricky trying to get the advert in at the right time, and then actually it closes every month and we don't know where quite to place it, and we'd like to get stuff on that more in the social housing, but there aren't any notice boards, and so you actually just hear these accounts of each other witness each other's accounts and get some insight into what it is they are or aren't trying to do, what's working for them, what's not working for them. That was workshop 1. From that, the designers take some insights and they go on, as we do as designers, into, okay, I'm going to start messing about, make some prototypes, think of some other interactions that are going to find out more about something I'm interested in, which took us into workshop 2. And in workshop 2, you can actually see from some of these experiences, so this person here, the designer, was interested in the demotivation that they'd heard the story of demotivation. Someone didn't get any feedback, and as a consequence of not getting any feedback, they were getting really demotivated about that. The employer had said, actually, you know what, we have sort of like hundreds, if not sometimes even 1,000 applications to a job, but certainly hundreds of applications to a job, and we just can't get all of that feedback out. They hadn't prioritised that they didn't expect that amount of demand, and they hadn't prioritised it in terms of one of the things they had to get done, because their primary thing was to fill the job, not to give feedback to the community, otherwise the community would get demotivated. So they got an insight there, but she was saying, okay, well, the idea of this designer was, what about flowers that don't get what they need and start to wilt? You know, is that an analogy for somebody that's not getting the feedback and becoming sort of demotivated? Is that an analogy that would work? So she takes that into this sort of second prototyping workshop. She's asking some questions about flowers. This is an employer that you're seeing talking. This is a resident that you're seeing really attentively looking at what's being said there. And actually, I would argue that having been present in those workshops, there was some real attention to what was going on there. You know, in a conversation about a subject that they wouldn't be, well, don't take it from me, take it some of the people, those comments we've got at the end, but it's not typical that you would get a resident and a local employer that closely engaged. And you can see some of the actions. It's like, you know, someone's telling you something about, well, look, you know, it's slightly, this is what I'm feeling. And this person's like really paying attention and trying to, you know, they're understanding, they're properly listening. That's a proper exchange happening there. And there were several of those moments. The third moment was when they've actually developed the prototype for the tools. They've taken those insights away, is that working? And they come back with some prototypes for the tools they're going to deliver. And here, this one's about a job seeker experience. So the person on the left here is they're only allowed to answer the questions that are asked of them with this really weird shaped object that's got exactly the same number of sides as all the other objects. It's got the same coloured faces as all the other objects, but it's very different to the other objects in terms of the shape of the faces. But they can only answer the questions that are asked of them by the person that's got the full array of all the objects. And they're trying to match this object to the object they want, but actually, by asking the questions, they realise that it's really difficult, if you only ask certain questions, to be able to tell somebody who you are, what your key characteristics are that might make you be the one you've been looking for. That was one experience. This other one, a bit like your VR experience, was this set of goggles that turn things upside down. So it turned things upside down, and then a really simple task. You try to arrange these numbers 1 to 10, you sort of can't do it. You try to create this sort of like figure of your persona, if you like, this figure of yourself, but you sort of can't do it. You're sort of missing things. And it's the idea that when we're under pressure, because this came out from a lot of the people, when we're under pressure, stuff that's really easy for us, stuff that's really obvious to us, actually we get all fingers and thumbs and we just can't get it done. So then you get someone that's very accomplished, like this guy that he's interviewed, 10 people a week, but he puts the goggles on upside down and say, right, arrange these things 1 to 10, please. Can't do it, and sort of it starts to reflect on actually, and with the context that the students being able to set up around it and describe why they're asking them to engage in that way, what the insights are that are being drawn into that, it starts to give some space for reflection. You can see these residents here quite amused by that, and they're sort of, there's a bit of role reversal going on as well, where it's a bit like sort of, so what's it like then? What's it like to feel a bit on the spot and fingers and thumbs, because usually you're so accomplished. So there's this sort of slight experiencing the other person's situation. And we got a bunch of different feedback. That, this isn't sort of any big quantitative evaluation we might be looking for, but it's some insightful qualitative evaluation where people are saying afterwards that one of the people from one of these employers, actually from a part of one of the local big local organisations just gone in there, was saying, you know what, I'm currently writing our recruitment strategy, and I'm going to go back there and I'm going to put in this section around ensuring that we give that feedback to applicants. Might make no difference, we don't know yet, but actually just the idea that somebody's sort of actions in the future might be changed by some greater understanding they've got. Is that just insights that we get from a normal design insight that we've got by doing some sort of some design research that we're all pretty typical about, that we understand? It could be that it's just that. So is it just a design method or a design tool, or is the fact that you're doing something together, the fact that it's a more collaborative research between these sort of two protagonists, if you like, in this situation, is that something different? And then what we found was that here, the end result was meant to be this empathy thing, this object that when you engaged with it, you got an experience of somebody else, a part of someone else's experience. What we noticed was that it was the process that actually delivered a lot of these sort of empathic returns, if you like. And so this is one of the things that we were interested in a couple of years ago around this space of, is that then an empathy thing? Because we understood the fact that design is often can be referred to as a thing, as this sort of socio-material interaction around the issue of concern, depending on the concern that the design's addressing. We're saying, okay, well, if we're doing this in the context of empathy, is this an empathy thing? Is there something we can learn from that? And then we started to understand that other people are doing similar things, and that's where we are now. And yeah, so maybe sometimes this result is the destination, that otherwise without which we wouldn't go on the journey. But the journey we go on, the process, might be the thing that delivers the empathy. So in terms of social innovation, the idea that we're social in our means as well as our ends. You know, here are we talking about being empathic in our means as well as our ends? Don't know. These are some of the things we're trying to learn. Is it all bleeding obvious and we know it all from design already, or can we get better at it? And are there some specific contexts where it's more useful? Don't know. So these are some of the questions that we're thinking about at the moment.